In the bustling streets of Chicago lived a young woman named Maya. At 24, she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, though you'd never hear her complain. Every morning before dawn, she set up her food cart on the corner of Michigan Avenue, selling hot dogs, pretzels, and cold drinks to the rush of commuters heading to work. Maya wasn't always a street vendor. Life had dealt her a difficult hand when she was just 12 years old. Her parents died in a tragic apartment fire, leaving her alone with two younger brothers, Marcus, who was 8, and little Tommy, who had just turned 6. With no relatives willing to take them in, Maya became their guardian, their provider, and their only hope. She started small, selling candy bars at the train station. Then she moved to washing cars on weekends. When that wasn't enough, she convinced an older vendor to teach her the food cart business. That's how she ended up spending 14 hours a day on street corners, rain or shine, serving customers with a smile despite her aching feet and tired eyes. Her cart was old and squeaky, painted a faded red that had seen better days. The umbrella overhead had patches, and sometimes the wheels stuck. But Maya kept it spotlessly clean. She took pride in her work, always greeting customers warmly and making sure every hot dog was perfectly prepared. Some nights, when business was slow and the city lights twinkled above, Maya would lean against her cart and look up at the tall buildings surrounding her. One day, she'd whisper to herself, things will get better. She didn't know how or when, but she held on to that hope like a lifeline. What Maya didn't know was that her life was about to intersect with someone from a completely different world. Someone who would see past her worn clothes and tired eyes to the genuine heart that beat beneath. Change was coming, and it would arrive in the most unexpected way. If you're enjoying Maya's story and want to see what happens next, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling me what you think will happen when Maya's world collides with wealth and power. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss. 3,000 miles away in Manhattan, a man named Alexander Hayes stood in his penthouse office, looking out over the city skyline. At 30 years old, he'd already built an empire. His real estate development firm owned properties across the United States and Europe. His face graced business magazines, and his name appeared on charity galas and corporate boards. But success hadn't changed Alexander's core values. Raised by a mother who volunteered at homeless shelters and a father who believed in honest work, he'd learned early that money was simply a tool. What mattered was how you used it and how you treated people along the way. Despite his wealth, Alexander lived a relatively quiet life. He didn't enjoy the club scene or the superficial social circles that came with his status. He'd dated several women over the years, beautiful, accomplished women from prominent families, but something always felt hollow. They seemed more interested in his portfolio than his personality, more attracted to his addresses than his actual self. "I just want someone real," he once told his assistant. "Someone who understands struggle, who has genuine kindness. Not someone performing kindness because it looks good." After spending nearly a decade building his European operations, Alexander decided to return to Chicago for an extended stay. He missed the city of his childhood, the simple pleasures of deep dish pizza and Lake Michigan breezes. He wanted to personally oversee a new community housing project on the South Side, affordable apartments for working families, something close to his heart. On a crisp autumn morning, Alexander woke up feeling energized. He decided to dress casually, just jeans, a plain gray sweater, and a baseball cap. No designer labels, no flashy accessories. He wanted to blend in, to be just another person in the city for once. He grabbed the keys to his modest black sedan, not the luxury cars sitting in his garage, and headed out. His plan was simple: stop at a local convenience store for supplies, then drive out to inspect the construction site. As he pulled into the parking lot of a small grocery store in a middle-class neighborhood, Alexander felt lighter than he had in months. Sometimes, he thought, the best luxury is just being anonymous. He had no idea that this ordinary morning shopping trip would become the most significant moment of his life. Inside the small convenience store, Alexander moved through the aisles picking up basics: bottled water, energy bars, coffee, and some fresh fruit. The store was quiet, just a few other shoppers going about their morning routines. He appreciated the simplicity of it all. At the checkout counter, he chatted briefly with the elderly cashier about the weather, paid for his items, and carefully tucked his wallet into his back pocket. Or so he thought. As Alexander walked across the parking lot toward his car, his wallet, a sleek black leather billfold, slipped from his pocket and fell silently onto the asphalt. He didn't notice. His mind was already on the construction site and the meetings he had scheduled for later that week. He loaded his groceries into the trunk, settled into the driver's seat, and pulled out of the parking lot without a backward glance. The wallet lay there on the pavement, heavy with cash and cards, waiting. That morning, Maya had decided to treat herself and her brothers to a few groceries. She'd had a particularly good week at her cart. A corporate event nearby had brought steady customers, and her tip jar had filled up nicely. She wanted to buy fresh vegetables and maybe some chicken to make a proper dinner. As she walked out of the store carrying her small bag of groceries, something caught her eye near the parking spaces. A black wallet, lying face up on the ground. Maya stopped. She looked around. No one seemed to be searching for anything. She glanced at her watch. She needed to get to her cart location soon, but she couldn't just leave it there. Bending down, she picked up the wallet. It felt substantial. She opened it carefully and her eyes widened. There were several credit cards, business cards with embossed lettering, what looked like international identification cards, and a thick stack of cash, mostly $100 bills. She quickly estimated there must be over $2,000. For a moment, just a brief moment, Maya felt the weight of what this money could mean. 3 months of rent. New shoes for Marcus and Tommy. Repairs to her cart. Maybe even a small savings cushion. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the wallet. No one would know. No one had seen her pick it up. But then she thought of Marcus and Tommy, watching her every day, learning from her example. She thought of her parents and the values they'd instilled before they died. She thought of the person who lost this wallet and how panicked they must be feeling. Maya took a deep breath, closed the wallet, and walked back into the store. "Excuse me," Maya said, approaching the cashier. "I just found this wallet in the parking lot. Someone must have dropped it." The elderly cashier looked up, surprised. Her eyes went from Maya's worn jacket to the expensive-looking wallet, then back to Maya's face. "Oh my," the cashier said. "That's quite a lot of money to find." "I know," Maya replied quietly. "That's why I wanted to make sure it gets back to whoever lost it. Can you keep it safe? Maybe give it to your manager or security." The cashier studied Maya for a long moment, then smiled warmly. "You're a good person, you know that? Not many people would return something like this." Maya shrugged, feeling slightly embarrassed. "It's not mine." Simple as that. She handed over the wallet, declined the cashier's offer to take her contact information. "I don't need thanks, I just want them to get it back," and left the store. She had a food cart to set up and brothers to feed. Meanwhile, at a gas station 5 miles away, Alexander reached for his wallet to pay for fuel. His hand met empty pocket. His stomach dropped. He checked his other pockets. Nothing. He opened his car door and searched frantically. The seats, under the seats, the center console, the glove compartment. Nothing. "My wallet," he said aloud, his voice tight with stress. That wallet contained everything. His driver's license, credit cards, business cards for important contacts, and his mother's photograph, which he carried everywhere since her death 2 years ago. Without even apologizing to the confused gas station attendant, Alexander jumped back in his car and retraced his route. His heart pounded as he drove. The wallet had to be at the grocery store. It had to be. When he burst through the store's entrance 15 minutes later, he went straight to the counter, slightly breathless. "Excuse me," he said to the same elderly cashier. "I was here about 20 minutes ago. I think I dropped my wallet. Did anyone turn one in?" The cashier's face lit up with recognition. "Oh, yes, yes. Are you Alexander Hayes?" His eyes widened. "How did you? Your business card is in the wallet." A young woman found it and brought it right back in. "Let me get the manager." Relief flooded through Alexander like a wave. A manager appeared moments later, verified his identity, and handed over the wallet. Alexander opened it with shaking hands. Everything was there. Every card. Every dollar. Even his mother's photograph. "The woman who found this," Alexander said urgently. "Is she still here? I need to thank her." The cashier shook her head. "She left right away. Didn't even want to leave her name." "Can you describe her? Do you know where I can find her?" The cashier thought for a moment. She was young, mid-20s maybe. She was carrying groceries. She wore a gray jacket with some patches. She seemed tired but kind. "That's all I remember." She didn't want any recognition. Alexander pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down his phone number. "Please," he said, pressing it into the cashier's hand along with $100 bill for her trouble. "If she ever comes back, give her this. Tell her I need to thank her properly." The cashier promised she would. But as Alexander walked back to his car, he felt an odd emptiness. Gratitude mixed with curiosity. Who returns that much money without expecting anything? Who doesn't even leave their name? That night he couldn't sleep, his mind full of questions about the mysterious woman with the kind heart. 3 weeks passed. Alexander tried to focus on work, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the wallet incident. He'd built a billion-dollar company through determination and strategy, yet he couldn't find one honest woman in his own city. He'd sent his assistant back to the store twice, hoping she might return, but there was no sign of her. He even considered hiring a private investigator, but that felt wrong, invasive, somehow. If she'd wanted recognition, she would have left her information. "Maybe I should just be grateful and move on," he told himself. But something in his heart disagreed. Meanwhile, Maya continued her daily routine, unaware that anyone was looking for her. She'd actually gone back to that same store once, needing more supplies, but the cashier hadn't been working that day. The piece of paper with Alexander's number sat in a drawer somewhere in the store's office, waiting. Then one Saturday morning, Maya's neighbor knocked on her apartment door. "Maya!" Mrs. Chen called out excitedly. "There's a community event at the rec center today. A big real estate company is giving away free food, school supplies, and groceries. You should take Marcus and Tommy." Maya hesitated. Charity always made her uncomfortable, but Mrs. Chen was insistent. "It's for everyone in the neighborhood. You work hard, you deserve a little help sometimes." The recreational center was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Volunteers staffed tables loaded with canned goods, fresh produce, and household items. Children played in a cordoned-off area while parents waited in orderly lines. Music played softly, and the atmosphere felt warm and hopeful. Maya got in line with her brothers, grateful but still slightly uneasy. As she waited, she let her eyes wander across the crowd. At the beverage table, she noticed someone familiar, the cashier from the grocery store, volunteering to serve juice and water. Their eyes met. The cashier's face broke into a huge smile of recognition. She quickly served the person in front of her, then made her way over to Maya. "Oh my goodness," the woman said, slightly breathless. "It's you. The woman who returned the wallet." Maya smiled. "Yes, that's me. Nice to see you again. I have something for you," the cashier said urgently. "The man who lost the wallet, he left his number. He's been hoping you'd come back to the store." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "Really? That was kind of him, but I didn't do it for a reward." I know, the cashier interrupted. "But you should know something else." She leaned in close and whispered. "He's here. Right now. He's the one who organized this whole event." Maya froze. "What?" The cashier's eyes sparkled. "That man, Alexander Hayes, he owns Hayes Development. This is his charity outreach. And he's been looking for you." Before Maya could respond, the cashier was already pointing toward a black SUV parked near the building's entrance. That's him there. Let me go tell him you're here. Wait, no, Maya started to protest, but the cashier was already walking away with determined steps. Maya stood rooted to the spot, her heart racing. Marcus tugged at her sleeve. Maya, who are you talking about? She barely heard him. Her eyes followed the cashier as the woman approached the SUV, bent down to speak to someone inside, then pointed directly at Maya. The car door opened, and a man stepped out. Alexander looked in the direction the cashier was pointing, and his eyes found Maya. Even from a distance, something about her seemed familiar. The gray jacket, the cautious posture, the genuine expression. This was her. He knew it instinctively. He started walking toward her, his steps measured but purposeful. Maya stood frozen, one hand gripping Tommy's shoulder, unsure whether to run or stay. When Alexander reached her, he stopped a respectful distance away and smiled gently. "Hello," he said. "I've been hoping to meet you." "Hello, sir," Maya replied quietly, her voice steadier than she felt. "My name is Alexander Hayes, and I believe you saved me from a major headache a few weeks ago." Maya managed a small smile. "I just returned what wasn't mine." "That's..." Alexander paused, searching for words. "That's exactly the kind of thing most people say but don't actually do, especially with that much money involved." He looked at her directly. "What's your name?" "Maya," she said. "Maya Rodriguez." "Maya," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "I've been trying to find you for 3 weeks. I wanted to thank you properly." Maya looked down at her worn sneakers. "You don't need to thank me. I was just doing the right thing." "Maybe," Alexander said. "But the right thing should still be acknowledged. How did you hear about this event?" "My neighbor told me about it. She said there would be supplies for families in the area." Alexander nodded. "I'm glad you came." He pulled out his phone. "Would you mind giving me your number? I'd like to talk with you more, if that's okay. Not right now, I know you're busy, but perhaps sometime this week." Maya hesitated for only a moment before taking his phone and carefully typing in her number. As she handed it back, Alexander immediately called it so she would have his number too. "Please," he said warmly. "Call me when you get home. Or tomorrow. Anytime." Before leaving, Alexander walked back to his car and returned with a white envelope. "This is for your groceries," he said quietly. "Please accept it." Maya took the envelope with both hands, her eyes glistening slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "God bless you." Alexander watched her walk away with her brothers, something stirring in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. There was a grace about her, a dignity despite obvious hardship. He found himself wanting to know more, not just about the wallet incident, but about her life, her dreams, her story. Maya reached the bus stop with Marcus and Tommy, her mind spinning. Inside the envelope was $500, more than she usually made in 2 weeks. But it wasn't the money that occupied her thoughts. It was the way he'd looked at her, with genuine interest and respect, not pity. The bus arrived, and they squeezed into seats near the back. Maya carefully placed her handbag on her lap, making sure she had her phone easily accessible. She wanted to call Alexander when she got home, to thank him again properly. But as the bus lurched forward and then stopped suddenly at the next light, Maya's phone, which she'd set on her lap while searching for bus fare, slid onto the floor and under the seat in front of her. In the commotion of Marcus asking questions and Tommy needing help with his seatbelt, she didn't notice. When they reached their stop and the driver shouted for passengers to exit quickly, Maya grabbed her bag, helped her brothers down, and stepped off the bus. The doors closed behind her with a hiss, and the bus pulled away into traffic. Her phone remained under the seat, already forgotten, carrying with it Alexander's number and his hope for a call that would never come. Maya walked into her small apartment with her brothers, her heart still light from the encounter at the community event. She put the groceries away while Tommy and Marcus excitedly talked about the games they'd played at the rec center. After dinner, Maya remembered she wanted to call Alexander. She reached for her phone in her jacket pocket, but it wasn't there. She checked her jeans pockets. Nothing. She opened her handbag and searched carefully through every compartment. "Where's my phone?" she said aloud. Tommy looked up from his coloring book. "You had it on the bus, remember? When you were looking for money to pay." Maya's stomach sank. She closed her eyes, trying to remember. Yes, she'd set it on her lap. And then the bus had stopped suddenly, and everything was chaos, and, "Oh no," she whispered. She thought about calling the transit authority, but she didn't even know which bus number it was. She thought about going back to the rec center to find Alexander, but she didn't know if he'd still be there, and she felt embarrassed showing up without calling first like he'd asked. Maya sat on her small couch, staring at the wall. Here she was again, disconnected from an opportunity that might have changed things. She thought about the envelope with $500, which was wonderful and would help tremendously, but she'd lost something potentially more valuable. A connection to someone who seemed genuinely kind. If it's meant to be, she told herself quietly, it will happen somehow. That same evening, Alexander sat in his penthouse, checking his phone every few minutes. He'd hoped Maya would call to confirm she got home safely, maybe chat for a few minutes. He tried calling her number around 8 o'clock, but it went straight to voicemail, one of those generic messages that doesn't even identify the owner. He tried again an hour later. Same result. Maybe she's working late, he reasoned. But by 10 o'clock, when the phone still wasn't answering, doubt crept in. Had he come on too strong? Had she changed her mind about staying in touch? Alexander wasn't used to feeling uncertain. In business, he made decisions with confidence. But this was different. This was personal, and he felt suddenly vulnerable in a way he hadn't experienced in years. The next morning, he tried calling again. Still nothing. The phone went straight to that same automated message. By afternoon, Alexander found himself driving back to the rec center, hoping she might have mentioned where she lived to one of the volunteers. But no one seemed to know her. She'd arrived, received some supplies, and left. That was all. He went back to the grocery store. The elderly cashier remembered her, but only vaguely. She never said where she lived, the woman explained. Just bought groceries and left. I'm sorry. Alexander sat in his car in the parking lot, feeling frustrated and confused. How could someone disappear so completely in a city this size? How could he have finally met someone who interested him, really interested him, only to lose contact again? For the first time in his adult life, Alexander felt powerless. All his resources, all his connections, couldn't help him find one woman who didn't want to be found. Or perhaps couldn't be found. He drove home slowly, trying to convince himself to let it go. But something wouldn't let him. Some instinct told him this wasn't over, that fate wasn't done with them yet. Meanwhile, Maya threw herself back into her work. She woke up at 4:30 the next morning, prepared her cart, and was selling hot dogs by 6. The routine was familiar, comforting in its predictability. But every time a black sedan drove by, her heart jumped a little, hoping and fearing it might be him. Days turned into weeks. Alexander's calls to the number gradually stopped. Maya settled back into her rhythm, though something felt different now. Awareness of possibilities she hadn't imagined before. Neither of them knew that fate was preparing one more intersection, one more chance. And this time, when their paths crossed, everything would finally align. 2 weeks after the rec center event, Alexander decided to visit a construction site on the city's west side. His company was developing a small apartment complex, affordable housing for working families, a project close to his heart. As he pulled up to the site, workers in hard hats moved purposefully across the grounds. Cement mixers rumbled, welding sparks flew, and the skeletal framework of the building rose against the gray sky. This was the part of his business Alexander loved most. Seeing ideas transform into reality, creating homes where families would build memories. He parked his car and walked onto the site, greeting the foreman who showed him around. The foundation was complete, and the first floor walls were going up faster than scheduled. "We've got a good crew," the foreman said proudly. Everyone's working hard. As Alexander walked toward the southern section of the building, he saw workers carrying supplies back and forth. One figure caught his eye, smaller than the others, wearing an oversized work jacket and a bandana covering most of her hair. She was carrying a large bucket of concrete compound, straining under its weight but moving steadily forward. Something about the way she moved seemed familiar. Alexander stopped walking. He watched as the person set down the bucket, wiped sweat from her face with her sleeve, and reached for a water bottle. When she turned her head slightly to take a drink, he saw her profile. His breath caught. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." But as she moved closer, helping to carry plywood sheets to another part of the site, he became more certain. The shape of her face, the determined set of her shoulders. "Maya," he called out before he could stop himself. The woman froze. She turned slowly, and when their eyes met, her bucket nearly slipped from her hands. "Sir," she said, her voice barely audible over the construction noise. Alexander walked toward her quickly, his mind racing. Of all the places, all the possible scenarios, he never imagined finding her here, at his construction site, doing manual labor in the cold autumn wind. When he reached her, they stood facing each other, both too surprised to speak first. "You," Alexander began, then paused. He looked at her work clothes, the dust on her face, the exhaustion in her eyes. "You work here?" Maya nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I've been here about 2 months now. I work with the supply crew." "But you, at the rec center, you had your brothers with you. I thought you might be a teacher or a student or—" "I run a food cart," Maya said quietly. "During the mornings and evenings. But cart work is seasonal and unpredictable, so I take construction jobs when I can. The pay is better." Alexander felt like someone had punched him in the chest. This woman, who'd returned his wallet full of thousands of dollars without taking a cent, was working 2 grueling jobs just to survive. And he'd lost contact with her, thinking she'd simply chosen not to call. "Your phone," he said suddenly. "I tried calling you. Multiple times." Maya's expression turned regretful. "I lost it. That same day, on the bus home. By the time I realized it, it was too late. Why didn't you come back to find me? To the rec center or the store?" She looked down at her work boots. "I didn't want to seem, I don't know, desperate? Like I was chasing you for money. You'd already been so generous." Alexander shook his head slowly, a mixture of emotions crossing his face: relief, sadness, admiration, and something deeper he couldn't quite name yet. "Maya," he said gently, "when I watched you return that wallet, knowing what it contained, never asking for anything in return, and now seeing you here, working like this." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I need you to stop what you're doing and come with me. Right now." Maya's eyes widened. "Sir, I can't just leave. I'll lose this job. I need—" "You won't lose anything," Alexander interrupted firmly. "I own this construction site. This is my project. And I promise you, whatever happens next will be better than carrying concrete in the freezing cold." Maya stood there in her dusty work clothes, cement stains on her jeans, looking at Alexander in disbelief. "You own this building?" "My company does, yes," Alexander replied. "But that's not important right now. What matters is that you don't belong in this kind of work. Not because there's anything wrong with honest labor, but because someone with your character deserves better opportunities." "I don't understand," Maya said softly. Alexander gestured toward his car. "Please. Just give me an hour of your time. Let me explain something to you. If you want to come back to work afterward, I won't stop you. But I think you should hear what I have to say." Maya looked back at the construction site, then at her foreman, who was watching curiously from a distance. Alexander walked over to speak with him briefly. When he returned, he said, "You're excused for the rest of the day. Paid." Hesitantly, Maya followed Alexander to his car. As they drove, he began to talk. When I was 20 years old, he said, I made my first real estate investment with money I'd saved from working 3 jobs during college. It was a small duplex in a rough neighborhood. Everyone told me I was stupid, that I'd lose everything. Maya listened, her hands folded in her lap. But I didn't buy it to flip it for profit, Alexander continued. I bought it because I remembered being 10 years old, living in a cramped apartment with my parents and sister, watching my mother cry because we couldn't afford the rent increase. I bought that duplex because I wanted to create housing that working families could actually afford. He glanced at her briefly. That investment became 2 properties, then 5, then 20. But the principle never changed. I build for people who work hard and deserve stability. People like you. They pulled up to a beautiful brick house in a quiet neighborhood. It was modest by wealthy standards, but to Maya, it looked like something from a magazine. 2 stories, a small front yard with actual grass, flower boxes beneath the windows. This house, Alexander said as they parked, was supposed to be for my elderly nanny, the woman who helped raise me when my parents were working multiple jobs. I found her 2 months ago, living on the street, selling fruit to survive. Maya's hand went to her mouth. I built this for her, Alexander said. And yesterday she moved in. But seeing you at that construction site today made me realize something. There are more people like her, like you, who deserve a chance. He turned to face Maya directly. I'm offering you a job. Not carrying concrete. A real job at my company. I need someone in my community outreach division who understands what it's like to struggle, someone with integrity who can help me identify families that need support, manage charitable programs, work with social services. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Sir, I don't have a college degree. I barely finished high school because I had to work. You have something more valuable than a degree, Alexander interrupted. You have character. You proved that the day you returned my wallet. And character can't be taught in any classroom. I don't know what to say, Maya whispered. Say you'll think about it, Alexander replied. Say you'll at least come to my office tomorrow and let me show you what the position would involve. The salary would be enough to support you and your brothers comfortably. We'd provide training, mentorship, everything you need to succeed. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of cement dust on her cheek. Why are you doing this for me? Alexander smiled. Because 3 weeks ago, you did something for me when you had every reason not to. You had nothing, and I had everything, but you chose integrity over survival. That's rare, Maya. That's precious. And I don't want to live in a world where people like you go unrewarded while people like me keep accumulating more than we need. They sat in silence for a moment, both aware that this conversation was about more than just a job offer. There was something else hovering between them, unspoken but undeniable. Finally, Maya nodded. Okay. I'll come to your office tomorrow. Alexander's face broke into a genuine smile, not the polished businessman's smile, but something warm and real. Thank you, he said. You won't regret this. As he drove her back to get her things from the construction site, neither of them could have known that this was just the beginning. A job offer was one thing. But what was growing between them? The mutual respect, the unexpected connection, the sense that they'd been searching for each other without knowing it. That was something else entirely. 6 months later, Maya sat in her small but professional office on the 12th floor of Hayes Development. Through her window, she could see the Chicago skyline stretching out beneath a brilliant blue sky. On her desk sat a photo of Marcus and Tommy, both grinning in their new school uniforms, and a framed certificate of completion from the non-profit management training program Alexander had enrolled her in. Her journey from street vendor and construction worker to community outreach coordinator still felt surreal sometimes. But she'd proven herself capable, identifying deserving families for housing assistance, coordinating with social services, managing volunteer programs for the company's charitable initiatives. She'd found her calling in helping others the way she'd once needed help herself. But something else had changed too, something she hadn't expected. Over these 6 months, she and Alexander had spent countless hours together, initially discussing work, but gradually talking about everything else. Their childhoods, their fears, their dreams. He told her about his mother's death and how it had shaped his view of wealth. She told him about her parents' accident and how she'd raised her brothers. They discovered shared values, a belief in hard work, a commitment to helping others, a distrust of pretension. He admired her resilience and practical wisdom. She appreciated his humility despite his success, his genuine kindness when he thought no one was watching. There had been moments, a lingering glance during a meeting, his hand brushing hers when they reached for the same document, the way he always made sure she'd eaten during long work days. But neither had acted on it. The professional boundary seemed too important, too fragile to risk. Until today. Alexander had asked her to meet him at one of his properties. Not for work, he'd said. Just a conversation. Maya had been nervous all morning, wondering what he wanted to discuss. When she arrived at the address, she found herself in front of a beautiful brownstone in a tree-lined neighborhood. Alexander stood on the front steps, wearing jeans and a casual sweater, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. "Hi," he said as she approached. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," Maya replied, her heart beating faster. "What's this about?" Alexander gestured toward the building. "I want to show you something first." He led her inside, and Maya gasped. The brownstone had been completely renovated. Hardwood floors gleaming, modern kitchen with granite countertops, a cozy living room with a fireplace, 3 bedrooms upstairs, each one bright and spacious. "This is beautiful," Maya said, running her hand along the smooth banister of the staircase. "Is this one of your rental properties?" "Not exactly," Alexander said, his hands in his pockets. "I bought it 3 months ago. I've been fixing it up since then." Maya turned to look at him, confused. "For what?" Alexander took a deep breath. "Maya, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything. Can you do that?" She nodded, suddenly feeling very aware of how alone they were, how quiet the house was. "6 months ago," Alexander began, "you returned my wallet. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know what you might gain from it. You just saw something that wasn't yours and made sure it got back to its owner. That simple act of integrity stopped me in my tracks because I'd been searching for years, searching for someone genuine, someone whose character wasn't for sale." He moved closer to her, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then I found you again at the construction site, and I learned you were working 2 brutal jobs to take care of your brothers. You were exhausted, struggling, and yet you'd still chosen honesty over an easy way out. I offered you a job because you deserved it, yes. But also because I wanted you in my life. I wanted to see you every day. I wanted to know you." Maya's breath caught in her throat. "These past 6 months," Alexander continued, his voice softer now, "have been the best of my life. Not because business is good or because I've made more money. I don't care about any of that anymore. They've been the best because every morning I wake up knowing I'll see you. Every meeting is better because you're there. Every accomplishment means more because I can share it with you." He reached out and gently took her hand. "I know there's a power imbalance. I know I'm your employer, and that complicates things. But Maya, I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. I can't keep acting like you're just a colleague when you're so much more than that. You've become my best friend, my conscience, my inspiration. You've become..." He paused, searching for the right words. "You've become the person I want to build a life with." Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Alexander." "This house," he said, gesturing around them, "I renovated it for you and your brothers. Not as a bribe or a manipulation. You can keep working for me or not, stay in Chicago or move away, and this house is yours either way. But I'm hoping, I'm praying, that you'll want to stay. That you'll give us a chance to see what this could become." "I'm scared," Maya whispered. "Our worlds are so different. I don't know how to be part of your life, your real life. The galas and business dinners and my real life." Alexander interrupted gently. "Maya, You are my real life. Everything else is just noise. I don't care about galas. I care about Sunday mornings and home-cooked meals and helping Marcus with his homework and hearing about your day. That's what real life is. That's what I want. Maya looked around the beautiful house, then back at Alexander's hopeful face. She thought about the past 6 months, how safe she'd felt around him, how he made her laugh, how he treated her brothers with genuine affection, how he never made her feel less than anyone else despite their different backgrounds. I love you, she said suddenly, surprising herself. I've loved you for months, but I didn't think someone like you could want someone like me. Not really. Alexander's face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. Someone like you, he repeated softly. Maya, you're the strongest, most genuine, most incredible person I've ever met. I'm the one who can't believe you'd want someone like me, someone who was so lost before you came along that he didn't even know what he was missing. So what do we do now? Maya asked, smiling through her tears. Now, Alexander said, we start building something together. Slowly, if you want. At whatever pace feels right. But together. Maya nodded, and then finally, Alexander leaned down and kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Maya laughed, a sound of pure joy and relief. My brothers are going to lose their minds when they see this house. Wait until they see the backyard, Alexander said, grinning. I had a basketball court put in. You didn't. I absolutely did. Marcus mentioned he loved basketball. Maya shook her head in amazement. You really thought of everything. I tried, Alexander said. I wanted to show you that this isn't just words. I'm committed to this, to you, to your brothers, to building a real life together. One where you never have to worry about rent or jobs or survival again. One where you can focus on your dreams for once. They walked through the house together, hand in hand, as Alexander showed her every detail. The reading nook he'd built because she mentioned loving books, the office space for her continued education, the bedroom he designed with Tommy's love of dinosaurs in mind. I have one condition, Maya said as they stood in the master bedroom, sunlight streaming through the large windows. Anything, Alexander replied. I still want to work. Maybe not at your company anymore. That might be too complicated now. But I want to keep helping families like mine. I want to run programs, make a difference. I don't want to just be someone's girlfriend who stays home. Alexander smiled. I would never ask you to give that up. Actually, I've been thinking, what if we started a non-profit together? You could run it, make all the real decisions, and I could handle the boring financial stuff. We could help even more families, create real systemic change. Maya's eyes lit up. Really? Really? Your voice, your perspective, that's what's been missing from all my charitable work. I've been trying to help, but you understand what people actually need. Together, we could do something meaningful. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat on the front steps of the brownstone, their brownstone now. Alexander had his arm around Maya, and she leaned her head on his shoulder. You know what the craziest part of all this is? Maya said softly. What? If I hadn't returned that wallet, if I'd kept the money and disappeared, I would have had $2,000. But I would have missed all of this. This house, this relationship, this future. I would have sold something priceless for almost nothing. Alexander kissed the top of her head. That's the thing about integrity. It doesn't pay off immediately. Sometimes it feels like you're losing. But in the end, it's always worth more than any shortcut. My parents used to say something similar, Maya said quietly. They told me that doing the right thing is its own reward. I never fully understood it until now. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the neighborhood come alive with families returning home from work, children playing in front yards, the peaceful rhythm of everyday life. I can't wait to tell Marcus and Tommy, Maya finally said. They're going to think I'm making this up. Alexander laughed. Should we go get them now? Let them see the house. Not yet, Maya said, snuggling closer. Let's just stay here a little longer. Just us. Just us, Alexander agreed, pulling her closer. And in that moment, sitting on the steps of a house built with love and hope, two people from completely different worlds found exactly what they'd been searching for all along. Someone who saw them for who they really were, someone who valued character over status, someone who proved that the best kind of wealth isn't measured in money but in the genuine connections we build with others. Maya had returned a wallet and gained a fortune. Not the fortune of dollars and cents, but something far more valuable. Love, security, partnership, and the promise of a future built on mutual respect and shared values. And Alexander, who'd had everything money could buy but nothing that truly mattered, finally found what no amount of wealth could purchase. A genuine heart, an honest soul, and a love that was real because it was earned, not bought. Sometimes the most valuable things in life come from the simplest acts of kindness. Sometimes a single moment of integrity can change everything. And sometimes, when wealth finally meets virtue, it creates something beautiful that neither could achieve alone. 6 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Alexander and Maya stood together at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Rodriguez Hayes Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to supporting working families with housing assistance, job training, and educational programs. Marcus and Tommy stood proudly beside them, wearing their best clothes and grinning from ear to ear. As Maya cut the ribbon and the crowd applauded, Alexander whispered in her ear, "Thank you for returning my wallet." Maya smiled up at him. "Thank you for seeing me." "Always," he replied. "Always." And they were right. It was just the beginning. Not just of the foundation or their relationship, but of a life built on the solid ground of respect, integrity, and genuine love. The kind of life that no amount of money could buy, but that one simple act of honesty had made possible. Because in the end, when wealth meets virtue, everybody wins. The end. Thank you so much for joining us on Maya and Alexander's incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message about integrity, kindness, and unexpected blessings. Drop a comment below telling me what your favorite moment was. Want more inspiring stories? Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next upload. Remember, your character is your greatest wealth. Until next time, keep choosing kindness.